My name is Sheila Dodson, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is December 22nd of 2012, and for that I'm eternally grateful, and everybody else that knows me is eternally grateful. Sunlight of the Spirit. I love that. I love that very much, because I will tell you, of course, this is a little experience, strength, and hope, what it was like, what happened, what I'm like now, what it was like. I didn't start out a drinker from any age. It was always there. It was always available. My parents are not alcoholics. My family's not alcoholics. I'm it, kind of like Zane said. I was it, and I don't know why. Still to this day, I don't know why. That because I was around beer and all that my entire life, because my family, we own a beer, wine, and liquor distributorship. And I've been there 41 years in June, so kind of ironic that I'm standing here today. But in all of that, like I said, nobody drank heavily. It was just always there. If you wanted to drink a beer, you took a drink of beer. If you wanted a little sip off, Mama's Chilton, you took a little sip off Mama's Chilton. It was no big deal. So I had a very pleasant childhood. I was raised with everything I ever needed. I never needed for anything and never really wanted for anything either until I got older. And that's when all of a sudden my life took on, like I said, my childhood was great. Vacations, we did all these things together. We were very family-oriented, grandparents, great-grandparents. But I got older and I didn't fit in with my family. Even though they were boozing. I didn't fit in with them because I didn't like them when they did booze up and have parties and all that, because I didn't understand why they were so damn happy and I wasn't. And I got to thinking, well, maybe it's the booze. It wasn't the booze. It wasn't the booze because, to tell you the truth, I drank like a normal person for many, many years. And when it started taking a toll on me well, I can tell you this, just like every other alcoholic, things weren't going my way. So instead of trying to push myself in to fit in, I forced myself to fit in. So what that means is I became very rude. I became very bullyish because I wanted my way. And that started, like I said, at a young age. There was nothing wrong. It's just, and also, to top it off, I'm a middle child. Which that really doesn't have anything to do with it, except I didn't meet my sister until I was 13 years old. That kind of played a part in my journey to self-loathing and worry and my worth. Because number one, nobody ever told me I had a sister. I didn't know my dad was ever married before, and then I found out my mother was married before. So all of this stuff when I was about 14 years old came up on me, and I couldn't understand why nobody would tell me the truth. It wasn't going to hurt me. Why didn't they tell me when I was 6 instead of when I was 14, when I could go out and grab some of that other stuff, to quiet all and to fit, So I became, like I said, the bully. I started bullying things because I wasn't getting my way, because all of a sudden this older sister of mine had showed up in our life, and everybody's like, oh, we've missed you. We didn't know her, so how could we miss her, right? So I was on the back burner. I was my mother's only daughter. So all of a sudden the stepsister or the half-sister came in, and all of a sudden she was getting the attention. And I realized later what my parents told me is they didn't have to worry about me because I was very level-headed and she was the screwed up one. Okay. I guess at that time, right? So this went on for a little bit, and that's about the time, like I said, I kind of got out of the bullying a little bit, but then I started rebelling. And I don't mean rebelling like going out and drinking and smoking and doing all that stuff. I'm talking about the bad-mouthing, back-talking my mother, trying to get away with stuff. And you can't get away from stuff from your parents. You think you can, but you can't. And I think it got to a point where my family finally tolerated it and said, okay, here's the deal. You get through high school and you have two options. You go to college or you get out and you get a job. Okay, college sounds good. So I was in college for 7 years. And because they said as long as I was in college, they'd pay for it. So I kind of let go of some of that stuff from my childhood because I was like, you know what? That half sister of mine, whoever she is, she lives in Oklahoma with her mama, so she only came to visit every once in a while. But throughout the years, through that little bit, I found out that I wasn't the tornado through my family, she was. Because she played that part, right? That role. She was pitting. Mom against our dad, my mom against our dad, And so I thought, well, I'll just give it back, right? That didn't work, and so I just went ahead and I decided, okay, I'll go to college. So in the meantime, trying to fight her and fight my family over who gets what, and by God, I'm going to be in da-da-da-da. Like I said, 7 years of college and 4 colleges, and Texas Tech was a semester of that, and I have no idea when I was here. None. I lived in a dorm room with somebody, and I wasn't registered to live in a dorm room. So, that was early on. That was like 1985, I think, because I went to WT first, and I got into a sorority, so that college life was 1.6. And so my parents were like, you really need an education. So let's try to buckle down and this and that. Well, you know what comes with going to college, right? And a sorority and a fraternity? Keg parties. Well, like I said, I never really felt good in my own skin, so I became that girl that everybody wanted to invite to their party. And if y'all were an alcoholic, or if you're an alcoholic like me, I needed all the attention all the time. And no matter what attention I got, whether it was good or bad, I was going to take it. So that became my, so to speak, party time. I was drinking and all that, but it wasn't constant. It was weekend binging. It was fraternity. Well, actually, I canceled all my classes on Friday just because that was not happening. Because Thursday night were the mixers. Even here, back then in '84, the mixers were Thursday nights. And yeah, I drove down and came to some of them too. But then all of a sudden, Friday was off Friday, and then, I started canceling a class on Monday. And then all of a sudden, I just wasn't going to school. I was going to my dorm room. I just wasn't going to classes. So WT failed me. Okay. That was great. Not really. And my parents are like, well, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, I'm going to move back home. And I'll use nice words. My dad said, the hell you are. He said, the deal was you go to college or you get a job. Well, at the time, I was still working for my family in name only. They were, I started there when I was 15, and they were giving me a check, and the check was to pay for my education. It did not pay for education. It paid for liquor and weed, personally, honestly. And so when I moved from Canyon, then I came here for a semester, living in the dorm I didn't pay for, and went to one class. So, and I passed that, but that wasn't working out for me either, so my parents said, yeah, you're partying too much, and that's not working out, so you need to go somewhere else. You really need to decide what you want to do, and I said, okay. And at the time, I was working for a funeral home, and I was just answering phone calls and typing up death certificates and opening at night and stuff like that. And my bosses, this was a nighttime job, and they said, well, your dad is on your ass a lot, and he's asked me to ask you if you'll go to school if we send you on a scholarship. Would you like to go be a funeral director? Sure. So that's what I did. So I moved to San Antonio, enrolled in the mortuary science class and all that. And you know what? I did graduate that school with a degree, but to this day, I don't really use it. I went down there because I thought, well, San Antonio and Austin and San Marcos and all that, that's party schools, right? I still to this day can't believe I passed those classes. But I'll tell you this, not one time did I drink any alcohol down there. It was all weed. And somebody said, do you remember that chemistry class? No, I don't. They said, well, you didn't drink. How come you don't remember it? And I said, yeah, but did you see my bone? So, that was a little outside issue of mine, but that was college only because guess what? When you graduate college, you have to get a job, right? A real job. Well, you're supposed to. So my dad said, well, why don't you come back? this was the catcher. Why don't you come back and fill in? My secretary's retiring. I went, I can do that. And I told him, but I said, I have to be back in San Antonio in the fall because I'm starting an internship. He said, yeah, no worries. Well, it's 2024, and here I am still in Amarillo. So what had happened is that was a ploy of my parents for me to come back for that summer. His secretary, it's very, very weird when I say it out loud. But the plan was, so he gave his secretary a leave of absence to pull me in to work for him. He sent a couple of my uncles down, unloaded and loaded up my apartment in San Antonio, and moved all my stuff back to Amarillo so I couldn't go back down there. Because he said I needed some guidance. Well, I just graduated college. That's what they told me to do. All right? Well, it turns out it wasn't my dad's deal. My mother was really empty nesting, okay? And she had begun to self-harm herself because I had left. I was gone for 4 years. So anyway, so I came back, started working for the company again, and it wasn't a good fit for me because I hadn't figured out I was an alcoholic yet. And the job they gave me was, hey, why don't you be one of those Coors girls and go around to the bars? Sure, little short tank top, little short shorts, and cowboy boots, midnight rodeo, really. So what they were doing, they were paying me to drink. And at the time, I didn't know I had any addictive personality whatsoever. Because I thought when I drank it was fine as long as I had a beer that next morning and lay your hands off my crap in my refrigerator. That's not a problem, right? Normal people say, don't touch my stuff, right? No, they don't. It's okay if you take their last beer because they don't need it at 6 in the morning. So that is when I had become, because I was getting paid to go out to the bars at night, then I didn't have to come into work till about 12 or 1. And, somebody'd be in town, you better take them to lunch. Yeah, beer. Cycle. Well, it just started tasting a lot better. And I noticed that I started becoming a better person when I drank. I got funny, and I got pretty, and I could wear high heels. I've sprained my ankle a few times on those heels, but damn, I look good. And that was, but that alcohol gave me confidence. And that's so sad today to have me hear, say that out of my mouth. But it did. It gave me that little oomph I needed just to be funny, to be pretty and smile and all that. But it also got me in a world of danger because I turned into a fighter. And not fist. I would throw knives at you. I would carry a gun and I'd shoot in your direction. I wouldn't hit you. When I could see 2D. So I got really aggressive on but it was up and down, and people kept telling me, you have a drinking problem, but more than that, you have an anger problem. And I said, but my anger is because y'all won't give me enough booze. Up my expense account because I cannot take these people out and have them drink. They're spending all my money. They were having 2, I was having 12. So it went through, and of course, I'm going to put this in the middle of my story because I'd already graduated and I was back with a resentment. Y'all know I had a resentment with my parents moving my stuff back, right? Okay. I didn't know what a resentment was. I just thought they were buttholes. And I thought, how selfish of them to bring me back for their own needs. It's exactly and I thought, I'll show them. So, of course, there's always a man in the story. Well, there was a bar in Amarillo called Monopolies, and I had taken some people out. And at the time, the drinking age had gone back down to 18. But here I am. I've got an expense account, so I've been into every bar in Amarillo and everywhere. And there was this real pretty guy, real pretty arm candy. I was 19, I think, 18, 19. Met up with him. We danced all night. Got in the truck with him. He drove me home. And that night, he told my parents, I've asked Sheila to marry me. And she said, yes. I just met him that night. But you know what my dumb ass did? Said, sure did. I'm getting out of here. I'd known him for 3 hours, and I married him. A month and a half later, in a big church wedding, you can imagine the stress on my mother. But he was the one. He was the one, you know. Well, that's when it really, really got, because he was gone a lot, and he told me, you know, he's gone for business and da-da-da. Okay, I was 19 and dumb, and I didn't care because I had a job. I had my own money. I didn't have to rely on him and all this. Well, it turned out he was a very, very major drug dealer. I mean, I'm talking over states into Mexico, back in truckload drug dealer, not a mule, a truck, you know. And, I just loved him. No, it's okay if he was in jail 5 or 6 times while we were married. We were married 11 months. And he was in jail 6 times. And one of the times was really nice because he'd gone to Dallas and he said, yeah, I got to go pick up this and that. I'm oblivious at this moment, right? I really did think he was going to pick up materials. He was, but not building supplies. And he came back in this brand new pickup. And I was like, oh, good. He got the job. You know, we're going to do good. We can get out of that trailer he put me in, and so we enjoyed the truck for a few days and this and that. Well, I'd driven it up to the grocery store one day, and I came out, and there were cops surrounding it and drew their guns at me. And I was like, did I park wrong? And they're like, no, this truck was stolen off the lot in Decatur. The guy do you know the man that drives, or that is, is this yours? And I said, no, it's my husband's truck. And he said, no, he drove it off the lot in Decatur. So he just got in it and took off. And I felt bad for him. I was like, God, the guy can't catch a break. All he wanted was this job, right? So about that time, he had introduced me to some of his friends and their wives. And I thought, okay, maybe this was a little change I needed. Maybe I needed some women in my life, because I really didn't like women, They all were going after this pretty guy married, and stuff like that. Well, he introduced me to his mules, is what they were. So it was the women that were hauling back their stuff in their stuff, okay? They were not good influences on me at all. So it was a couple, and I have to say weeks, because this is how my marriage was one day at a time. It was nothing ever going to be permanent or long term, and I knew that. I just wanted somebody to love me. Didn't matter. So a couple weeks pass. At the door, DEA, okay, great. And I'm like, you're not going to find anything here. Yeah, they did. They ripped up the cushions in my couch, tore up all my stuff, and found pounds of dope in my own home. Oblivious. He had stuffed it down in the holes of my bowling ball, y'all. Bowling ball. And so I called my dad and I said, oh my God, you're never going to believe, somebody's framed John. And he's like, honey, nobody, but this is what you need to do. Well, anyway, of course, the husband wasn't around, but they found him because, I was just, you got to go get him, and it's a misunderstanding. I told him I'd let him right to him, which was okay, because right after that, he did some other stuff that landed, and he has bought his ticket in prison today. I'll just say that, because he is permanently incarcerated for life for attempted murder and kidnapping. And by the grace of God, it wasn't me. And it wasn't the child that he attempted to murder. It wasn't much, So anyway, I kind of let that go. And for years, that was my excuse to drink, because you know why? That was my story. People loved for me to tell stories on him, right? So it went along. Then I met somebody else. Now, this guy was a good guy, but I did meet him in a bar. But kind of like Lubbock, Amarillo, we don't have anything but bars, And This gentleman turned up to be a really nice guy. We're divorced now. We've been divorced 18 years, but we were together 16, and we have 2 wonderful children, and he's a friend of mine today. So that had nothing at all to do with anything. He was a good man, and I'm the one that drank too much and ran him off. Because that's what happened, is I got happy, and I got stale. I got to the point, it's like, okay, you got kids, what do you want now? We got the house, we got this. He's working, I'm working. Well, needless to say, that marriage didn't last. And by the time we divorced, I was 40. And I bought a new home, bought a new car, and I told people, I tell people this all the time, is I literally remember saying to myself, it's my turn. And I was 40 years old. And from that day until I got sober when I was 46, I had a drink every single day. I don't remember eating in the year 2012 when I got sober. The treatment place asked me what I ate, and I said, like yesterday or last week. And they were like, well, anytime. And I said, let me think. And they said, no, I'm like, in the week is fine. I said, no, I'm trying to remember for the year. So I hadn't eaten anything in 2012 that I can remember because, number one, I'd stopped getting invited to Christmas and Thanksgiving and birthdays and all that. But that was kind of great because I kind of enjoyed it because I didn't want to go anyway. You know, we get in that mood where it's like, hey, you're interrupting my stuff. So my children were to the point, my son was already at driving and he would drive my daughter around. So that started my journey of seriously trying to drink myself to death because I didn't know I was so unhappy. I thought, you know, I'm friends with my ex-husband. I've got 2 happy children. They're in good schools. Got my own house, got this. What's missing? Of course, what do we all say? A man. No, there hasn't been a man in these 18 years, so to speak, that I've been divorced. There was one, but I've worked that step. You know that column, yes, no, maybe, never. My sponsor added a never. He's a never with good warrant. But I won't discuss him because I don't want his name come out of my mouth. That's what we do. So anyway, I moved into my house June the 6th of 2006, in my new home. And June the 16th, I got my first DUI. And my lawyer was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get a slap on the wrist, you know, because it's your first. You are going to have to pay a fine, and they'll give you probation. Just be cool, right? Okay, I can do that. And he said, and don't drink. But like I said, at the time, I didn't know I was an alcoholic. So I thought when he said don't drink, I thought he meant like out in public, you know, or don't get drunk in front of people because, you know, your probation officer may be in the bar, right? Yeah, that didn't last because a month later I got my second DUI. 1 month later. So that was a little more serious. And so I did not have to spend any jail time, but I got added on probation. And unfortunately, that time that I got stopped, I had my daughter in the car with me. And she was a minor. So I got, thank God it wasn't a felony. Okay? Because honestly, I don't even remember her being in the car. And she had a friend with her. And when they stopped me, they said, well, we're going to call somebody to come pick up your daughter. And I said, why? She's at home. And they're like, no, honey, she's in the back seat. I loaded her up because I didn't want to leave her at home by herself. She was 12. So that ensued, and I got a little straighter. I got a little, let's say, with the law for a moment. But my drinking increased a lot. And then I became a secret drinker. I didn't drink anything but beer, so it's kind of hard to hide beer, right? But I had it all over my house. I had a cooler in the closet, not just one closet, several closets, and I had a cooler by the side of my bed. In the last 3 years I was drinking, the ice in that cooler never melted because I kept better care of that ice in that cooler than I did my children. That ice not melting was my priority. So People came to me and said, look, you have a problem. We got to do something. And, of course, what am I going to say? I'm going to say, this isn't a we thing. This is a me, and leave me the hell alone. I'm a grown-up. I'm going to do it. The kids are okay. No, the kids weren't okay. I wasn't okay. And you know alcoholics, when they keep telling us that we have the problem. We don't like that. We want to be in control even when we know we're not in control. Right? So I kept defying, and kept doing what I wanted. Here comes the third DUI, fourth DUI, and finally I got my fifth. And that was in 2012. That was the year I got sober. The fifth one was what did me in. Because I'd gone to I don't know if y'all know where Vega, Texas is or not, but Vega, it's a little town outside Amarillo, and of course anybody says party, what do? Yeah, and see how many people we can put in the car with us. I'd gotten to the point nobody was going to get in the car with me anymore. So I go by myself. Well, when I left the party, the person told me, they said, well, take your first left. When you get up to the intersection, take you straight into Amarillo, straight home. Well, if you know the roads around here, some roads when you turn on are two-way. I turned on, and what I was doing is I was going down the wrong side of I-40 back to Amarillo. Trucks were honking, flashing their lights at me, and I'm such a great drinker in my cups that I'm doing this, going, get out of my lane. Why, that was it. And the thing about it is I don't remember, the only thing I remember about that, number one, is flipping the bird to the truckers. And I remember when they pulled me over, I said, I don't understand this. Why are y'all picking on me? I said, because I pulled over right when you hit your lights. And they said, yeah, darling, but you're in the median. And I said, yeah, I know, but I pulled over to the right? And he said, and the guy that pulled me over, Texas State Trooper I went to high school with. And everybody in high school calls me by my last name, my maiden name, and he said, Reed, he said, you're going down this time. He said, there's not a lawyer going to touch you with this one. And I honestly said, yeah, whatever. And there was a tall boy sitting next to me, and I popped it open, and he looked at me, and he goes, are you serious? And I said, I'm going to jail anyway, right? He goes, yeah, but your blood alcohol. And I said, yeah, it's not going to be much different. So I said, if you can just wait a few minutes, I really, really need this beer. Well, everything's recorded, right? Body cams, jail, and all that. It was brutal. I was so dehydrated and had not had anything but booze in my system. Did you know that my fingerprints wouldn't show up? They tried to get my fingerprints, and they were like, you're not in the system. And I was like, really? They're like, we got to let you go. So they let me go, but they tracked me later and found out that I had 4 previous. So that was the last straw with me, my family, and everybody else, because my daughter came to me right after that, and she came in my room, and she looked at me, and she said, Mother, I hate you, and I hope you die. And I looked at her, and I said, that's the plan. So she moved out and moved in with my parents, and I continued to drink. But I quit going to work because I was given an ultimatum. You either come to work, quit drinking, come to work, or you just do your own thing. Well, I thought that was an option. So I just kept doing my own thing. Kept drinking. I didn't get any DUIs after that because I got my license. Of course, my license was gone. It was horrible. So I started calling taxis. I had my own taxi service, basically, taking me to bars. Well, of course, what do we do when we get into a bar? We get too drunk, and we always make an ass out of ourselves. You can't get away with that in Amarillo when you work for a beer company and your dad owns it. He knew everything I was doing. He just could not stop me because I was an adult, right? But I quit going to work, and I figured what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drink. And, it will take me. I don't have to put a gun in my mouth. I don't have to swallow pills. I'll just keep drinking and let it take me. So we all know what happens. You keep coming to in the morning and getting more and more deep into depression, more in denial, more resentments. And I finally got to the point I said, God, I can't even die right. But I would not put a gun in my, I wouldn't do anything like that. I wanted the booze to take me. And for some sick reason in my head, it's because I wanted it on my headstone. Told you so. Told you I could handle it. In the grave? That was my sick thinking, is I was going to drink just to tell you how I... So that's what when I figured out I drank at people. Because I was so disappointed and so grossed out by myself. There wasn't anything I wouldn't do for a drink. I love dares. Dare me. I'll jump off that hotel. I score. I only broke my leg once. So, but that's the depression part. And that's when it gets to the point that because my body absolutely had to have alcohol constantly. There was no time that I felt good sober. Or partially sober, because in 6 years I don't remember being at all sober. But I never could get the relief I needed because I was putting it on you people, that you were supposed to make me happy. That it was your job because do you know who I am? Type deal. Well, the thing about that is I didn't know who I was. So when my dad and my brother gave me that ultimatum, you quit working or you quit drinking, come to work, straighten up, or don't. Well, they called me in again. They said, look, this is going to be it. We need to know what you want to do. And I said, I don't care. I don't care. Just take care of my kids. And my mom and my mother was alive at the time, and they were not going to have that. And he said, you know what? Why don't you just take this week off and do whatever you want. Whatever you feel like doing, you just do. And he has a real way of, when he's mad at me, calling me little girl. He said, little girl, you just go do that. Well, during the week, that 1 week that I was off work, I had a friend that overdosed. And it was accidental. And it pissed me off. And I thought it was accidental. She'd been doing drugs. Why'd she die? Why'd they take her? Not me. So I had a friend come over, and he brought me my Keystone Light because I was almost out, but I had ice. I just didn't have any beer. And he came over, and we started talking, and we were talking about our friend that had OD'd. And he said, Sheila, you're real close to it, girl. He said, keep on going. You're almost there. He was encouraging me. He was like, you're almost there. And he left, and I hit my knees, and I said, holy God, what am I going to do now? Because he'd put something into me because what we did was we talked bad about her. What a loser she was because she couldn't stop doing what she was doing. And laughing about it. And so anyway, I hit my knees, and that's the first time I'd done that in a long time. Because I grew up in religion. But I'm growing through spirituality now. And I never knew the difference. So I called up my dad the next day, and I said, I'm ready. And he said, got you a place. Pack your bags. See you tomorrow morning. You're going to Abilene. And I said, okay. And he said, really? He was very surprised. And I said, Dad, I got to do something. And I said, I'll give it a try. I didn't know that was one of the first steps to this deal. I was willing. And I thought if it doesn't work, then, of course, as a person that didn't know much about AA, you're going to teach me to drink like a lady. There was one before. But when I got to treatment, I heard a lot of things that I'd never heard in life. Nobody talks about, in my family, it was like, if you got a problem, you keep it inside because nobody wants to hear that. Don't bring people down because you're having a bad day. If you're depressed, take a pill and get over it. Not talk about it, not talk about your little feelers and all that. I never got the opportunity to, in the way that I did it aggressively. And I did it mean, and I fought because I thought nobody will ever listen to me. Y'all did. And I thought, y'all are sick. Why, But what I heard, one of the very first things I heard is it's a faceless, ageless enemy. And it don't matter who you are. It don't matter who you come from, where you come from, what you do for a living, like one of the speakers said earlier. It's going to get you. It's going to get you. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a chance. And I was promised, they said it's a 12-step program. And I went, apparently that's a good thing. I'd heard about 12-step programs, so I said, oh, good. I'll get all 12, right? 32 days in, they said, oh, you're ready to complete. And I said, no, I'm not leaving. And they said, why not? And I said, because I've only gone through the 5 steps. And I said, then you want me to take it out in the yard and burn it? And they said, yeah, then it's over. And I went, well, the big book I've been reading says I need to continue all the way through 12. And they said, holy shit, you're paying attention. And I said, well, I've learned in treatment that my life does matter, that I have self-worth, and what I do with it is what I need to do with it. But I got to let go of all this other stuff. But I need that 4th step for my steps later on. And if I burn it out there, blah, 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 blah. Right. And they said, well, sorry, you have to complete. And I said, And by this time, I'd gotten my little sarcasm back, spark, because I've been sober for 32, 34 days. I was feeling good. And so I went to my counselor and I said, this is a 12-step program. And she said, well, yeah. She said, you get the others when you go out there. And I said, no, you promised me 12. She said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And I said, you promised me 12. And she goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to stay until I get all 12 steps explained to me and I work through them. And she goes, well, you're going to have to pay it on your own dime. Do you know what I did? Because I learned that how honest, open-minded, and willing. And once I walked in there, that is the most relief I had had in years. Because I just knew I was someplace. And you know what? I could open up and talk about my feelings and how I felt. And you know what? Y'all just sat there and stared at me and nodded your head. And we're like, oh. But you also taught me, too, that it's up to me. And to rely on a higher power, higher power, bigger than me. But it took me to do it. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be sober. What am I going to do sober? And my little temporary sponsor I had down there, she goes, get into service. And I went, I did all this work I'm not going to help other people. And that's what I said. And she goes, I don't think you're reading the black part. And I said, oh, no, I'm just reading the steps. She goes, well, we have other chapters, like working with others. And, it's not just the serenity prayer and the steps, And I'm like, oh, okay. And she said, well, that's what you do. When you go home, you help others. And I went, that's not what I do, though. And I said, what about me? And she goes, who cares about you? You go help somebody else. So, anyway, I graduated treatment after 64 days. Yeah. With all 12 steps in my pocket. And I went back to Amarillo, and that first night I went to a group. It's not my home group. But it was my first group. My home group now is the top of Texas in Amarillo. And, but this first group that I went to, they said, get a sponsor. Gotta get a sponsor. So I asked this gal, and she said, sure. She said, but I will tell you, I don't sponsor women that drink. And I went, well, I hope not. And she said, what were you doing at Fast Eddie's? And I said, well, I was at Fast Eddie's. And she said, well, I'm telling you, I don't sponsor women that drink. I remember reading something, and it's one of my favorite little snips in the big book, Contempt Prior to Investigation. And I looked at her and said that, and she goes, "You're a newbie. You don't know anything." And I said, "No, here's the deal." I said, "If you would have, whoever your spy is spying on me, but if you would have come and asked me," I said, "I could have told you that I was there with my son and daughter and it was their bucket of beer." And I said, "But, this program works and I'm working it to the best of my ability and the obsession is removed." And I said, "It's not up to you to tell me." And she goes, "And you quit that job too because you'll drink again." And I said, "It's not a job, it's a career." And it finally came out of my mouth when I was sober. I've been in a career. I'm a better daughter, I'm a better employee, and all that. But that woman telling me that, and at first I thought, I could get angry, and I didn't. I just told her, I said, I'm going to find somebody else to work with. And that girl got drunk. And she blamed me for her drunk. Because I fired her. What do we tell each other? Don't work my program, I won't work yours. Because I can get a resentment against anybody anytime, but you know what? I can get away from it any day, anytime too. I don't need that. I've got the tools today. And I'm one of those, and you probably know, you can kind of tell, I don't like being told what to do. But I will, if it's for the best of everybody around me, not me anymore. Like I said, I grew up in religion, but I'm growing still in spirituality in this program. Because I didn't know what it was like to have that, because it was always this. You've got to do this because this book says so. This says this. And some people say, well, that's what AA does. And I said, but it's how I take it and what I do with it. I said, when I was going to church, there was no action. In AA, there's action. And I jumped right in, and with the spirituality that I have today, I think it makes me a better person for other people, because you know what? I really do help people today, and I like it. There are some of them are kind of weird at first, but who isn't? Little twitchy, like I was. And, but I'll tell you, one of the first things I did, though, and I'm glad I did this, at 4 months sober, I went to my first area assembly, and it was here in Lubbock. And I saw a whole different deal. And somebody said, well, that's service. And I said, you mean I've been cleaning them ashtrays? And I'm a smoker, but, I've been cleaning those ashtrays. And they said, well, that's service too. And I said, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do what that guy in that suit's doing. He was the delegate. And they said, you can, that's a goal if you want it. And I said, not somebody like me. And I said, but I want to be here to help. Well, what do you do when you say, we do this? You're on this committee, and you're going to stand for that. So now I think today I'm on 8 committees. I'm a chair of 2. But the best deal was getting into area service. And before I knew it, I was on the ballot for delegate. Came out of the hat. That's a God thing. Because I was sitting back waiting for the other fella to get it. Honestly, and I thought, I'll have, and that's when I realized, well, it's not when I realized, but the people that I've met and the places I've gone shows me how big AA is and how small AA is. It's a small world in this organization we're in, because anywhere I go, and this is the one thing I love about being a past delegate, I got to meet all these people from every single state in all of Canada. So anywhere I go, I do not have an excuse not to pick up that phone and call somebody, because I know an alcoholic in every single state. Right? And if they can't get me somewhere, they call somebody, they'll get me to somebody. I can't ever get out of the AA loop. Yay. That's the bomb. I'm the only one that can take me out of it. And that's if I fall back on my program, get mad or resentful at you and go, I'm going to drink at you again. You don't care if I get drunk. Normal people don't care if we get drunk, right? They go home and go to sleep and they don't worry about me. But I will carry that resentment on for 2 days if I'm drinking, because it's all your fault. I've learned today that it is my fault. There's a lot of things that were my fault. But it's okay today because life is balanced out. Got a good home life, got a good spiritual life, got a great AA life. I gotta say, it's greater than anything I've ever imagined in my entire life. And like Linda said, we make a host of friends. And like I said, I can't swing my arms without hitting an alcoholic, and that sounds so weird. Nor people out there wouldn't understand that, but I'm so grateful today that I can swing my arms out and hit an alcoholic because I don't have to worry about fitting in anymore. And I don't worry about what I'm wearing when I walk in the door or what I don't wear coming in the door anymore, because I'm just not all that. And that's okay. I'm just a human being with feelings that happens to be an alcoholic because I can't control it once I drink it. I love it. Loved it. Loved it. I really did. I had good times drinking. I had bad times. But there's not anything in this world anymore that would give me anything to say, hey, I'll give you this if you'll go back drinking. Not one thing. Somebody said, well, if you could have your mom back for an hour, would you? And I said, no. Because I said, then she'd hate me. Because I was fortunate enough while she was dying to be able to sit with her for 3 years and take care of her. And I never knew my mother was a sick little puppy like the rest of us. My mother was human. A lot of us don't get the opportunity to learn that about our parents. I got to talk to her, sit with her, and I got to be her caregiver. And on her deathbed, she said, and she said just one thing, and she was lucid, for a little bit. She said, the one thing I really, really would ask, and she said, I'm not demanding it. And she said, don't think anything of it. She said, I really like you. And she said, the drink took you away from me. And if you drink again, you're going to take yourself away from those people that really do care for you. And she said, because I didn't like you for a long time, but I like you. She always told me she loved me. Nobody ever told me they liked me. And certainly not my mother. And it's not because she had any angst towards me or anything. She just didn't like my behavior when I drank. And I didn't know any other behavior. Because, when you start drinking, your brain stops right there. If you start at 16 and stop at 36, you've got a 16-year-old brain. So thank God that, I was 46, but I had some maturity. But in those last, a couple years of my mother's life, like I said, I finally really, really knew what it was to do for somebody else that couldn't do for themselves. And all those years of them laying in bed at night, waiting on that phone to ring, I hurt them in the most possible way I could. I stole their trust. I stole their time. And I stole all that from them. I stole their peace of mind. Because of my selfishness. And if it wasn't for this program and giving back, I wouldn't have what I have today. Because I have managed to mend every single relationship except one. That never. But you know what? Me and God are square with that today. But it's a fantastic life. I could not I could imagine being drunk today. I really, really could. But I'd be sitting my ass in prison. Drinking prison hooch. Or whatever. Hooch. And about jail, I'll finish up with this a little bit. But I did have to spend some time in jail, and I was sober. That little adventure I took from Vega caught up to me, and they notified Potter and Randall County because I'd gotten DUIs in both of those. And so they took me to court, and I ended up spending 72 days in that little jail. But I was sober, and I had my big book. And a couple people came and saw me, it was all right. But honestly, I wanted to be alone. And I was alone for those 72 days pretty much because I had my own little cell. And they gave me the remote to the TV. And what am I watching? Law and Order, of course. And trying to get out of that Oldham County jail. But those days, I had a lot of time to reflect and read that book. And I put myself in every single one of those stories. I put myself on every single one of those pages. And I said, no. I had, 6 months sober at the time, and I was sitting in a jail cell. And I thought, yep, I'm an alcoholic. And I smiled to myself, and I said, that's okay, because I'm not a drunk anymore. And I'm not driving down that highway going to hit your grandchild, going to hit your mother. I'm not going to destroy and put disaster in anybody's path anymore. Because if I do, it's my own. I'll do it to me. But I'm not going to do it. But you know what? I don't have to treat myself like that anymore. Like I said, I've got some self-confidence back, got some self-worth. And anytime I start to feel, I can call anybody. I got Bob's number. Yeah, I got everybody. I can call anybody. And we will talk to each other. And I was so scared to come in here and be different. But I'm not. I'm not different. I just don't drink. And it's made me a better person. My personality, my health. I'm not. I went to treatment, y'all, and I weighed about 90 pounds. And that's why they asked me when I ate. And I was like, I don't know. But I gained 40 in treatment, so yeah. They feed you good. But like I said, the sunlight of the Spirit is our theme, and I've got a little quote that I read a long time ago that goes along with this, and it's not even in any of our literature. It just says, "May the sunlight of the Spirit be so present that you can hear it." And when I read that, I thought, you know what that meant? Just quiet. It's okay today to be quiet. I don't have the chaos in my life. I'm moving into my own place after 18 years, right? I'm moving into an apartment from a home. I told Linda, I cried like a baby and I whined to my kids and all that. It's fear. It's okay. It's a change. But change is good. Because it's going to be good for me. It's going to be good for everybody. And you know what? My daughter and son-in-law need to raise their own damn kids, right? That's right. So, but anyway, thank you to the committee and thank y'all for listening and everything. And I'm so, y'all just don't understand how much I love Lubbock and District 4. Y'all are I'm past delegate and I shouldn't say that, but y'all are my favorite district. And I'm gonna leave you with one more thing, and this is a little make you think. But this is something that I end, I start with and end my day with, and in my prayers and my meditation. The things we take for granted, someone else is praying for. So thank y'all very much.